Hi everyone. So we have talked about a lot of forest financing and seen terrible forest pictures, so I would like to start with nice pictures. This is what forests are. They are more than timber. They are biodiversity, as we have heard. They provide ecosystem services such as water regulation and carbon sequestration. And they are also sources of non-timber forest products, which can, in some cases, help even to alleviate poverty. And why forest management matters? Because although we have initiatives such as RED, and we have protected areas, but those are not going to conserve biodiversity. Those are not going to provide timber. So it does matter. We need timber. And over the time, forest management practices have evolved. Traditionally, forests were used by rural people for multiple goods and services. Then we entered the world of professional forestry, and the focus shifted more towards non-declining flow of timber. After the Rio Summit in 1992, it was recognized, and on the way, we moved back towards where we had left, that forests provide multiple goods, and so they should manage for it. And then after goods came services, and forestry concept entered sustainable forest management phase. During recent years, we have recognized more and more that forests are part of a larger landscape, and those should be managed accordingly, part of an ecosystem and larger landscape. So this is where we are in theory. In practice, we are not there yet. The emphasis is still on timber, and multiple use management in tropics is very rare. It happens in some cases. Brazil nut is a very good example for that, but generally, never. And focus is also generally at the stand level instead of larger landscape, and maximizing short-term profits remains the norm. Also, it should be recognized that forests are very different from other forms of capital, because once forests are clear-cut, there is no forest left. The capital is gone, and it will take years to grow back. So why we are not there where we are? Obviously, there are several issues, and I'm not going to go through all of them. These are a couple of highlights only. And so there are governance issues. We are here to talk about forests, but usually forests do not feature high on any political agenda. Not for governments, not for industry, not for communities. Forests are not economically that important usually that it would make the government top 10 or top 3 or whatever we would need to focus really on how forests are managed. Also, there are very high opportunity costs associated for maintaining forest as forest. We have heard how palm oil is very profitable, and so it does make sense to convert the forest land you have to palm oil production. And finally, there are lack of tenure. There are lack of tenure in many places in tropics, and that creates real problems in my opinion, because if you don't know the forest will be yours or the forest concession will be yours in 10 years time or even tomorrow, why to invest in sustainable forest management? There are economical issues, which we have heard of some. There are usually the benefits from sustainable forest management are not very clear. So we know natural benefits, but we don't know what are the clear financial benefits. And so it's easier to continue as companies have always done. Also, there are inappropriate wage system for forest workers. The company may have brilliant management plan for the forest area, but the forest workers are paid by volume. So why would they implement the plan? And there is inefficiency along the market chain as well as in the forest. And there are also knowledge and technical guidance issues. So there are case studies where forests have been managed for multiple benefits, but those are not very highly publicized. So nobody knows. There is not enough information. Also, anyone who has ever read management regulations will know that they often appear too complicated or unrealistic. And this is even like for someone who comes from forestry background, yeah, it does not make sense. I would also go with the easiest way to do forest management instead of following the management regulations. And finally, there is lack of trained staff to implement improved management. And this is a big issue because it looks like forestry education or the appeal of forestry education is going down. So in the future, there may even be less knowledgeable staff to employ. So how to get where we want to be? For companies, that would mean using reduced impact logging techniques and also carrying out post-logging silvicultural treatments. Here I would want to highlight the role of secondary forest. We have talked about a lot, we have heard a lot about natural forest, but in reality, secondary forests are going to be the most important ones. So even in terms of biodiversity conservation, you may have protected areas, but without secondary forests and their proper management, it's going to be very hard to conserve biodiversity. And also, in terms of secondary forest, rehabilitation will provide clear carbon benefits. So the forest area will sequester more carbon when there is proper silvicultural treatments in place. And again, training of the forest workers. Then we would want to increase tenure security, which is going to be very hard in many places, and I do recognize that. And also increase sector efficiency and develop policy incentives and market-based instruments to improve management. We have heard how certification is still a very little, or is still very small in forestry realm, but it is still the most effective way to improve management. So definitely we would recommend fostering third-party certification. Currently, there is a trend towards more regulation, and that may play into the role into the role of forest management in the future. But still, I think market-based instruments are very valuable, and when companies can do voluntary certification, then they will probably also stick with it better. And finally, however we do and whatever we do, management practices are not going to be sustainable or are not going to lead to sustainability in the long term if there is no good governance and if they are not backed by financial incentives. It is said by ITTO that countries with low rates of illegal timber and high rates of certification will be winners in the future, and I completely agree with that. Where those countries will be, don't know. And I would like to end by saying why if sustainable forest management really is an achievable goal. In my perspective, it is, But that's where the investors really play a role, and I think play a key role. Paul highlighted earlier this afternoon that that money matters, and that's exactly what it does. It matters, and we need investors, and we need sustainable investment. Thank you very much.